Hey everyone, welcome to Sunday Commutes, a podcast where I combine the worlds of web development and business and share my experiences. This is podcast episode 62, where I'll be answering the question, why are people choosing React? Now, specifically, I'm talking about the JavaScript framework that allows you to build user interfaces, specifically for web development, but there's different platforms as well, but I'll get into all of that. So this is for anyone, not just developers, but anyone that is maybe a recruiter or anyone in the tech software industry. Perhaps you've actually heard of React before. And even if you haven't, but you're thinking about the technology stack that you want to use for your next software project, React is definitely something that gets tossed around a lot. And it's a framework to definitely consider because of its sheer popularity, but I don't want to just say that it's popular, go use it. I want to dive into the three major categories of benefits that that I think is the reason why people are choosing React and why it's so big in the industry. So, yes, this is essentially just for anyone to get a good high-level overview. I'm not going to dive into the technical details, but if you just need a quick overview, be able to understand it, hopefully after this quick episode, then I'll be happy if I'm able to accomplish that for you today. So I'm going to dive into three main categories. The first one is community, the second one is efficiency, and then longevity. So let's start with community. The community is a really big thing, and it's kind of a different way of phrasing, the popularity of React, but I like to say community because it pretty much it dives into the number of resources that are available because of the number of people that are using React. So there's a lot of documentation, a lot of tutorials, a lot of articles that you can find, and especially courses, even free ones. So if you're trying to find resources specifically for learning React and trying to get better at it, and so on, there's going to be a lot out there because there's just a lot of people creating content for React specifically. And then there's also, this is a really big point, specifically for development. So anytime that myself, for example, as a developer, whenever I come across a problem, and if I'm using a framework, I typically will think to myself, there's probably someone that out there that has come across this issue before. And so what I'll just do, instead of wasting multiple hours or potentially days trying to solve that problem, then, I'll just Google for it. I'll try to see, I'll just Google my problem and I'll try to see if anyone has a solution out there. And typically someone has asked the same question on a public forum or a chat or something. And I can find that someone also answered that question. And so I can get that same solution. Also, typically what a lot of developers will do is when they come across a problem and they find a solution for it, they'll document it. They'll write an article on their blog or, they'll just post it online somewhere. And so someone like me later on, I have the same problem, find it through Google and I, solve my problem in a matter of a few minutes or, maybe an hour or two versus the multiple that I would be wasting. So that's really huge. And when you are dealing with either, if you're not using any framework or standard browser technologies, so if you have a proprietary framework, this is going to be a really big problem because if that proprietary framework is only used within your company, hence why it's proprietary, your only resources are, within the company. Other coworkers or if someone's documented something within the company. But with something like React, because there's so many people using it, because there's such a large community, you're able to just Google for the answers and be able to build things really quickly that way. And then also, because this is pretty much just because it's so popular, there are a lot of companies that are hiring for React. So if you're simply trying to get a job, then it's worth looking into this because so many different companies will list it as a requirement or at least a nice to have. And then because React in itself is so big, there's actually a whole ecosystem around it. So a lot of people are building different libraries that or tools that work really well with React. And specifically, you can actually build multiple different things for different platforms. If you want mobile apps, you can use React. There's something called React Native. If you want static sites, you can use Gatsby. And if you want dynamic sites with search engine optimization, SEO, actually did an episode on that. Next.js is a good option as well. And all of these allow you to build with React. So you're building upon the same ecosystem, upon the same framework for multiple different solutions that you might need. So community is definitely a big reason for why I think people are choosing React. Now, the second category is efficiency. So it's not specifically just that React in itself is efficient, even though it is in many ways. This is specifically for how efficient you're able to build interfaces with React. Because I'm not going to get into the details of this technically, but essentially what this allows you to do, because it's declarative, it prevents many simple bugs. You get to develop those interfaces much quicker. You're going to be able to write less code to accomplish the same thing as you would without having used any frameworks or having used other frameworks. And you're able to reuse code very easily. So you're able to be really efficient. This is personally my biggest benefit I see with React as a developer. I find that I'm able to build things a lot quicker with React versus without. And then longevity. So with any software-based company, assuming that your company is going to stay around for a long time, and especially if you work in a large company or corporation, you're going to assume it's going to stay around like for forever, right? Or at the very least, like maybe at least a decade or something like that. So you don't want your software to become obsolete in a matter of a few years, right? If next year, or if you build something with that framework this year, you don't want to have to rewrite your entire code base just next year or in the next 2 years, right? You want your software to be evergreen so that you can continuously update it, maintain it, and for that framework to not be obsolete. You want it to, stay around and be the framework that everyone else are using. So the longevity of React, there's a couple things to this. So one, it's backed by Facebook, and the tech team at Facebook, a bunch of smart folks there. And Facebook has been a huge contributor to open source, and React is one of those big projects that they have. And because Facebook is like such a large company, you can kind of guarantee that React is going to stay around for a good number of years. But it's not just that, because there's another framework called Angular that was backed by Google, but a lot less people are using it right now. And the reason, or the difference here, is that React has proven to be able to create or make updates to React, but in a more backwards compatible fashion. So that means that when React releases a new version with a bunch of updates, new features, bug fixes, whatever it might be, it's not suddenly going to break your application. And you're also not going to have to migrate your entire code because it's so different in this new version. So React over the last few years, like your code from a few years ago, most likely will work with the current version of React, so you don't have to do a lot of work with that. So essentially all I'm saying here is that React is going to stay for a good number of years. I'm saying at least for another 5 years, and this is because its popularity is like as big as another framework that was just as popular, and that was jQuery. And a lot of people actually are still using jQuery, but that has stayed for like over a decade. So React is kind of similar in that fashion. I think it's going to stay, at least 10 years. So at least 5 more years, I think React is going to continue to be used. And that's pretty much it. I think these 3 benefits or reasons are why people are choosing React over other frameworks, or just not using a framework at all, or a proprietary solution. So community, like I said, React is popular, but it's popular for a reason. And this allows you to get a lot of resources available to you. You're able to look stuff up. There's lots of libraries, tools, and so on. It's a large ecosystem around it as well. Efficiency, you're able to build stuff pretty quickly with React. And longevity, you don't have to worry about your software becoming obsolete in a matter of months or a few years. So yeah, hopefully this has given you a bit more understanding of what React is. So when let's say you're a recruiter or in HR, you can talk a little bit more about React and understand why developers are using it, why so many other companies are choosing it. So yeah, let me know what you thought about this, and what other topics you might want me to talk about in the future episodes. And you can definitely ask me any questions as well. I'd be happy to talk. You can find me on social media, on Twitter, on LinkedIn, or just send me an email. You can find all of that information on my website. I'll have a link in the show notes, but you can go to sunnysync.io and find all my stuff there, including my other content, my newsletter, my articles that I post on the blog about similar topics as well. So yeah, thank you for listening, and I'll catch you on the next episode.